Hello and thanks for checking out ChartGuys.com. We're proud to be one of the most successful technical analysis communities online, teaching you the skills to become a more confident, effective, and informed trader. Join our community of hundreds of analysts worldwide working together to learn the charts, generate profit, and achieve financial independence. For access to daily live chart analysis and market coverage, a thriving chat community, along with dozens of hours of exclusive educational materials. We look forward to seeing you. Let's check out some charts. Hey everyone, checking in on the MJ sector. So it's all about APHA earnings tomorrow pre-market. Certainly has our attention. And one thing that is of note is whenever we see a significant sector-wide bounce, whenever we see a bounce in the sector, it's correlated among all the individual names. And it almost always, in my opinion, recently has come from the individual name that's leading the reason to the downside finding a bottom. HCB had bad earnings, took the whole sector down with it. Once it found a bottom, everybody bounced together. So I'm watching APHA and Hexo, two recent very bearish names, for bounce signals to be looking to then apply that to the sector as a whole, and of course watching CGC as the sector leader as well. We also have CTST coming out with news halting today, and then news that they have to burn, $77 million in inventory. We'll be watching to see if they ever get a license back. I'm still not going to cover CTST as it's very high risk, high reward, more risk than reward in my opinion for bulls at this point, and I'm just not interested in it as far as daily technical analysis. So for CGC, we did get a great bounce today, and we were looking to play that bounce. Most people in the room played CGC, although other people branched out to other bounces because the sector bounced as a unit this morning. And for CGC, entered on the, waiting for a break of $19. We got it. And then just saw how thinly traded things were because Canada was closed today. The US was a holiday, and it was a holiday where trading is still going on, but there was no economic events. There is school off in a lot of areas. So just low volume all over the place and very thinly traded order books where a little bit of volume went a long way. And the bears to start the morning absolutely took that to their advantage and dumped the price. So I made an initial entry in the 1860s, and then I was going to make a second entry under $18. I held off when we actually broke $18 because I wanted to see a 2-minute or a 5-minute trend change to at least have a support level to be playing off of. When I made my initial entry in the 1860s, game plan was 3 total positions, worst case scenario if we just keep dumping. Why was I looking to enter? 4-hour RSI is almost at all-time lows. Again, we're still, even after the bounce today, 4-hour RSI is under 20. You look back historically on CGC, there has been one time where the RSI on the 4-hour dropped down to 16. Other than that, in the history of the last 2+ years, or actually just 2 years of trading, the 4-hour RSI historically bounces from about 20 to 22. So the fact that we're still at 20 after this bounce, can we go lower? Absolutely. That RSI can always set a new all-time low. But again, I like the odds of a bounce originating from this range because previous history shows us that this is the range where bounces originate. So that was one reason. The hourly RSI got into the low teens this morning. It was down at about, I think I looked and it was at 13, 14. So again, extremely beat up there. The 15-minute RSI this morning, that got down into the teens. All those things lined up means I am very comfortable making initial entry. I never got to add my second position where I wanted to on the bounce because this move right here tells me this is unusual. Again, when you watch charts, and the fact that I've been doing this for 9 years and I've been doing it every single day for 4.5 years, you get very accustomed to what's normal and what is unusual price action. And this right here is unusual price action. Why is this unusual? Because we're in a downtrend on every single time frame, and you don't just go from the low of the day straight into a 6.5% bounce on the 5-minute time frame with no consolidation, no 5-minute higher low and higher high trend change. It just doesn't happen very often at all. So this to me, on increasing bull volume, again, declining bull volume to start and then increasing to keep this move going. You zoom in, you look at it on the 2-hour time frame. To me, this is automated buying. This is algos that are either covering large short positions or entering long-term bullish positions. Aside from that, we had a volume climax. Again, I'm just going over all the details of what I look at in the moment of what helps me make decisions. The hourly volume on CGC Keeping in mind, it's supposed to be a low volume day. Canada's not trading. There's no arbitrage going on between CGC and weed, and there's not a ton of US traders out there. If you look at SPY's total volume today, I'm not going to pull it up, just take my word for it. It's one of the lowest volume days of the year. So CGC had a volume climax on the hourly time frame of 2.9 million shares traded. When is the last time CGC on the hourly traded at least 2.9 million shares traded? And the answer is you have to go back to early July. And if you look at every single time we'd see a spike like that, it's usually a short-term bottom climax into a bounce. But the point is, it's been over 2 months, July, August, September, 2.5 months since we have seen hourly RSI this high. And again, the fact that it was on a holiday makes it that much more clearly standing out as a temporary climax bottom. From there, the 15-minute time frame, at 11 a.m., we were able to recognize and say, okay, what's the most likely scenario? Are we going to V-shape bounce to a new high of the day? Or are we going to see a lower high and a 15-minute equilibrium? So at 11 a.m., before the top of this bounce was set, we were able to say, keep an eye out for a 15-minute equilibrium. That's the most likely scenario because of the high volatility and V-shaped nature of the recovery. So we had the equilibrium play out, high, low, lower high, higher low, lower high, higher low, lower high. Didn't break by the end of the day. I thought that it would because of how much time that we had to stay within that pattern, but volume really dropped off. And if you look at the correlation between SPY and CGC on the 5-minute time frame, there are a lot of similarities that tell me that SPY and CGC had a solid correlation today. They both hit highs at just after 2 p.m. Eastern. They both bottomed here for a higher low right around the same time. So correlation to SPY is definitely a factor when the volume drops off. Correlation to SPY does not matter here when you have high volume dictating price action, and then when the volume disappears, that's when it's more susceptible to the little algos that are going to be continuing to trade throughout the day relative to what CGC is doing. So in the end, I didn't enter on this consolidation. I watched the lower high. I exited partial position just under $19. I reloaded some of that position. I was just doing little micro trades managing my position. I entered here on this consolidation at about 1880. I entered a second position in addition to keeping my original entry down here, but entered a second position at about 1863 and then sold that little move into the end of the day just to drop my cost basis because I knew I wanted to swing at least one position. So where I stand right now, I am swing trading on CGC, 1 out of a maximum of 3 positions. Why am I swinging? Knowing that APHA earnings are a gamble and knowing that I'm going to be susceptible to the APHA correlation. Well, the reason is 4-hour RSI. If we see a bearish reaction to the APHA earnings on CGC and we drop back down to $18 or even the $16 range, I will happily add 2 more positions and average down knowing that at least a short-term oversold bounce will likely get me back in a comfortable position, even if it's just a 4-hour lower high and the daily bounce doesn't get any follow through. So that's just me being a bit more aggressive, absolutely, but also knowing that my standard day trade position now for CGC is currently costing me 50% less than it used to just in the recent past 2 months ago. So that's a factor as well, but I'm in a position. Another factor is I believe that a lot of the downside action on APHA is priced in. I feel that the least likely scenario tomorrow on APHA is a bearish reaction that lasts the entire day. Is it possible? Absolutely. In my opinion, if we see a bearish reaction on APHA, it will likely lead to a flush first thing in the morning, maybe even breaking $4, but we will see dip buying on that bearish reaction. Why do I feel that? Because in the last 3 days, we have priced in a bearish reaction to a large degree. We're down 19% from 3 days ago. So again, anybody holding APHA into earnings right now, while there are some people gambling that maybe entered today and hoping for a bullish reaction, for the most part, there's a lot of longs that are not going to be looking to bail on bad earnings, essentially. The bottom line is I feel that a lot of the bearish reaction that we may see on APHA has been priced in on the drop the last 3 days. And if it hasn't been, I do believe that a short-term temporary bottom will be set on a bearish reaction after not too long. I don't think we're going to see an Hexo type reaction. So Hexo was holding on just fine and did not price in the bearish guidance on earnings because we were holding on in a tightening range. That's a surprise. This is everybody, in my opinion, saying, I want to exit before we get into earnings and short saying, I want to enter before we get into earnings. We'll see how it ends up playing out. Definitely a little bit more gambly than I am normally, but I have my game plan established, so I'm very comfortable. ACB. So ACB, any kind of bounce, we need hourly trend changes. And if we look at CGC, the hourly time frame, we have the high of the day, low of the day, lower high. We know we're in a tightening range. For ACB, someone might look at this and say, well, we have the low high. That's a higher low and higher high. For me, I wouldn't argue with you too much. I'd say, okay, that logic makes sense. But for me, I would call this all the same bounce. Why? Because everybody else in the sector, this was all the same bounce, and we didn't see clear hourly trend changes in the sector. So for me, it's the high of the day, low of the day, lower high is 360, and the bulls have to hold 340 and break 360 to change the hourly trend. If any Canadian MJ names change their hourly trend, we zoom out to the daily, and we just look for daily lower highs. We've got 428 resistance on ACB, which means we could bounce 20% from where we just closed and still be looking for a daily lower high. Cron, bullish reversal candlestick on the daily. Anything under 944 is a lower high. Look at the difference here on the 15-minute. High, low, lower high, bull flag, new high of the day. Much more follow-through on that oversold bounce, going 7%. Not a huge difference, but the fact that we were able to break the high of the day is notable. And looking at the hourly chart, have we changed the hourly trend? No. Low of the day, high of the bounce, hourly higher low trying to form into the end of the day on this consolidation. Bulls have to hold 740 tomorrow and break 795 to change this hourly trend, which means zoom out and look for a daily lower high compared to 944 because we can still see a very large move and just be setting a lower high, 18%. TLRY, all-time lows on watch. That all-time low is down at 2010. So we're testing that right now. We got down to 2020. If we break 20 psychological, we have all-time lows. Black dirt breakdown. RSI will be crushed, but RSI can stay crushed in black dirt breakdown. So the RSI indicator goes out the window to a certain degree when that all-time low is hit. Short-term resistance on the hourly. Bulls have to hold 2020 and break 2135, a little double top today, and then 2151 to get some follow-through if we're going to see a bounce. And then we just look for a daily lower high compared to 2350. BFF dropping to a lower low today. Bear flag on the daily confirmed. No bottom set yet. Hourly time frame low. High of the bounce is 708. Higher low is 680. Bulls have to break 708 to change the hourly trend. We would zoom out and look at 781 as the next most important resistance level from there. Is that a daily trend change? If we get over that level, no. We would be breaking a lower high, but look back here. It's very similar. Weak bounce, drop to a lower low with no follow through, break resistance, but it didn't do anything, and then we drop to a lower low. So breaking that resistance, bulls will hope that will happen, but again, won't mean a whole lot bigger picture. It's the daily higher lows and higher highs that we need on the sector. And 2019 bottom will not be a phrase that is uttered in these videos, aside from just then, until we change daily trends in a very clear manner at a bare minimum. So again, we're looking for short-term oversold bounces, absolutely, but we are just looking for lower highs, which is why we as traders sell into strength when we're playing counter the trend. So a ton of people today in our chat room entered CGC between 1840 and under. Some people even entered under $18, getting a great entry. And again, selling into strength. A lot of people locked out all of their position. They locked in their gains on the day. They're heading into tomorrow with a fresh, clean slate and no risk and taking it as a new day. A lot of people sold partial positions. And again, if I enter at 1830 and I sell half at 1870, I can then put my stop loss at the low of the day, pretty much break even. And that is a very comfortable spot to be in. So we are always selling into some strength when we're playing counter the trend. And this bounce won't be any different. Hexo, no bottom yet. So again, we need a bottom in Hexo. We need a bottom in APHA if the sector is going to bounce. Hourly time frame, 228 is the low. 240 is multiple tops. Have a higher low, actually a double bottom. It's really just 228 to 240. If the bulls break 240, we zoom out and we look for a daily lower high to be set because anything under 364 is a lower high. And if we break 228, then there's no bottom yet and we look down towards 2 psychological. So bear's still in full control. RSI definitely getting extreme. As far as support levels go, 244 broke, so just too psychological. VGW. So now we're going to be looking at names that we're looking at the US ticker. And that's because they traded today, whereas the Canadian tickers did not. So for VGW, or VGWCF, 204 is the low, 205 is a double bottom, and we have a daily inside bar today. If we break 221 tomorrow, we have a double bottom, and then our focus shifts to 253 because anything under that is just a daily lower high. So low, high, trying for a double bottom, and then we'll look for a lower high compared to 253. If we do get a bull break, if we get a bear break, we're just going to drop to lower lows. ORHOF, fairly similar. We did already drop to a lower low. We bounced right after that. We know anything under 482 is just a daily lower high, so bulls aren't changing any kinds of trends. And what the bulls would just be hoping for at this point is a falling wedge pattern where we see bear breaks with no follow through, but watching for a lower high to be set on the daily. ITHUF bounced today after dropping to a lower low. Anything on the daily chart under 158 is a lower high. Have we changed the hourly trend? No. Low of the day, high of the bounce, higher low. Have to break the high of today tomorrow to change the hourly trend, and then we would just look for a lower high compared to 158. TCNNF, I made an entry today of initial starter position. My game plan will be to make one more entry if we were to pull back into the low $9 range. I would make a second entry and then put a stop for both positions under $9. We got up and broke short-term resistance today, only by a couple pennies. We did not break 983, and that is the level that has to break for bulls. Why do I like it? It's holding up better than all US MJ and correlations. I do believe if the sector of Canadian MJ bounces as a unit, even just looking for a daily lower high, a 2-day bounce, like we saw last time on CGC, 2 or 3 day bounce, if we get that in the Canadian MJ sector, I believe that'll be a great position for TRUL to be in, to have some upside momentum to break its short-term resistance and see some decent follow-through. 983, 10 psychological, and then 1067. But that's a bit reliant on the Canadian MJ sector getting a bounce in the near term, as long as we can hold $9 support. GTBIF, still no daily high or low set, still a lower high each day, and we're looking down at support of 854. Bulls have to hold 854 and break $9 to try and set our daily high or low on this pattern. MMNFF, new all-time, nope, take that back, but we're right on top of the all-time low. Hourly downtrend continues, no trend change yet. 115 and 116 are supports. Bulls have to hold those levels and break 127 for any short-term relief. Otherwise, we're looking down at 110 and $1. HRVSF looks like a daily bear flag, looks like the previous daily bear flag, which looks like the previous daily bear flag. So anything under 348 is a daily lower high. Bulls would have to hold 204 and then get over the daily exponential resistance to see any kind of meaningful bounce. So my focus is on the Canadian MJ names in the short term and APHA earnings tomorrow pre-market. I like the volume and volatility better on those Canadian MJ names for short-term gains. I'm certainly not going to be trying to day trade the US MJ space right now. And tomorrow's going to be a very interesting day. We'll see how it ends up playing out. And if we're going to see any kind of pressure put on shorts, we have to start taking out highs of previous days. Because again, CGC had great sustained buying, and it did put pressure on anybody that went short after the first 10 minutes of trading today. But again, we just zoom out, and aside from putting some pressure on late bears, no pressure was put on bears from previous days. Hope you have a good rest of your day. Do good things. Tomorrow will be interesting. Lots of opportunity out there with some nice volatility. Stay protective. Can we go lower? Absolutely. The answer is always yes.